I wasn't supposed to hear it. Nights in the comms room at Johnson Space Center were usually the same. Coffee gone cold, screens glowing with meaningless data, and static hissing through my headset like a lullaby. But that night, something slipped through. It wasn't noise. It wasn't the random chatter of deep space radiation or the bouncing echo of our satellites. It was a pattern. 3 pulses, a pause, then 3 more. Too precise to be chance, too deliberate to ignore. I froze, my pen hovering over the log sheet. The sound scratched at something primal in my mind, the way your skin prickles when someone is standing behind you in the dark. I adjusted the filters, shifted the frequency, and the pattern repeated, clearer this time. Not from Mars, not from the far-off probes, not even from the dark beyond. The origin point was closer, far closer than I wanted it to be. It was coming from inside the moon. I thought maybe I'd made a mistake, maybe it was interference from Earth's own signals bouncing oddly. But when I glanced up, the room had fallen silent. The supervisors, men who never flinched at anything, were leaning over the monitors, their faces drained of color. No one spoke, but the weight in the air told me I wasn't imagining it. The pattern shifted. A ripple through the static, almost like syllables. I couldn't translate it. Not then, but my gut told me it was language. Intentional. Alive. One of the older analysts muttered something I'll never forget. His voice trembled like he was standing at the edge of a grave. "It's awake," he whispered. And in that moment, I realized the moon wasn't silent, and it never had been. We just hadn't been listening in the right way. They called me in after hours, long after most of the building had emptied. The halls were dark. The hum of the ventilation louder than usual, every step echoing as if the walls themselves were listening. A guard I didn't recognize escorted me down a stairwell I didn't know existed, into a part of Johnson Space Center I'd never seen. The deeper we went, the colder it became, until the air smelled faintly of oil and rusted steel, like an old ship's hull. At the end of the corridor was a single door. Inside waited a man who didn't belong in this decade. His hair was white, thin, his face lined by time and something heavier, secrets that had carved their mark. I recognized him instantly from yellowing photographs of Apollo engineers, men who had put humanity on the moon. Dr. Harlan Pierce. He didn't waste time with introductions. Instead, he slid a battered folder across the table. "Look," he said simply. Inside were photographs, grainy, black and white, but unmistakable. Lunar landscapes I'd seen 100 times before, except these were different. Amid the gray dust and jagged shadows stood shapes that had no business being there. Massive hexagonal structures, half buried, yet too symmetrical, too precise to be natural. Some glowed faintly, like the embers of a fire that refused to die out. My mouth went dry. Why haven't I seen these before? "Because you were never meant to," Pierce replied, his voice low, almost resigned. He leaned forward, eyes locking on mine. "You think we stopped going to the moon because of budget cuts? Because the public lost interest?" I nodded slowly, the old story everyone believed. His lips thinned. "We stopped," he said, "because we were warned." I thought Pierce was exaggerating, maybe trying to scare me into silence, until he opened his briefcase and pulled out something far more dangerous than old photographs, schematics. They weren't the kind you'd find in an engineering manual. These were laid scans of Shackleton Crater, the deepest shadowed scar on the lunar South Pole, where sunlight almost never touched. At first it looked like geological data, ridges and caverns mapped in fine detail. But then I noticed the lines, too straight, too uniform. They weren't faults in the rock. They were structures. "Not natural," Pierce said, watching me closely. "We discovered this during Apollo. The scans showed something hollow, something alive." I frowned. "Alive?" He nodded grimly, pointing to the pulsating shapes etched into the diagram. The energy readings weren't consistent with mineral formations. They were rhythmic, like a pulse, like veins. My stomach tightened. "You mean biological?" "Not in the way we understand it," he replied. "It isn't flesh, but it behaves like it. A living machine, waiting." I stared at the printouts again, trying to reconcile what I was seeing with everything I thought I knew about the moon. It wasn't a dead rock hanging in the sky. It was a shell, a container, and humanity had brushed against it without realizing how close we came to something vast. Pierce's voice dropped, rough and weary. We landed on the surface. Yes. But the Apollo crews, they saw more. They saw something stir beneath the regolith. They saw light where there shouldn't have been light. He hesitated, eyes clouded with memory. And then they saw a door opening. The weight of his words pressed into me like gravity itself. If he was telling the truth, then the moon wasn't just a satellite. It was hiding something that had been waiting for us all along. The days that followed blurred together, but the signal didn't stop. Every night I sat in that dimly lit control room, headphones pressed tight, waiting for the static to break. And it always did. The knocks had become clearer, sharper, like someone rapping their knuckles on a wall, impatient. Then, slowly, the sound began to bend into something else. Words. Cracked, distorted, but words I could almost understand. Asterisk return, unfinished, return. Asterisk. The agency tried to keep it quiet, but whispers traveled faster than orders. Entire wings of NASA locked down overnight. Flights were grounded. Access badges stopped working. Scientists I'd seen in the cafeteria were suddenly gone, replaced with men and women in black suits who never gave names. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard that voice threaded through the static, as though it wasn't coming through the machines anymore, but whispering directly into me. It didn't feel alien. It felt expectant. Like a summons. Pierce called me again, his tone urgent, ragged. "They are hiding everything," he said, "but you need to see this." He smuggled me into a SICU lab after hours, the glow of monitors flickering against his pale face. On the screens was a live feed from a probe descending into Shackleton. At first it was just shadow. Jagged cliffs rising like broken teeth, the crater floor stretching into endless darkness. Then, as the probe dipped lower, the surface rippled. The ground itself seemed to split open, lines of cold blue light tracing outward in perfect symmetry. I leaned closer, breath caught in my chest. It wasn't stone breaking. It was something beneath the dust opening up, unfolding like the lid of a sarcophagus. And from that wound of light, something inside the moon stirred. The feed shuddered as the probe descended, its camera shaking against a vibration that wasn't wind, wasn't seismic activity. It was something deeper, like the heartbeat of a colossal animal awakening after an eternity of silence. Then the view cleared, and I saw what no human was meant to see. Beneath the lunar crust lay a chamber, so vast the probe's lights barely scratched its edges. It wasn't empty. It was alive with geometry, spires twisting like frozen lightning, suns suspended in the dark, burning in impossible shapes. The city, if that's what it was, didn't look built. It looked grown. Every structure pulsed faintly, connected by threads of light that stretched across the void like veins in a living body. I was still trying to comprehend it when the probe's lens shifted. Movement. Out of the radiant haze, a figure emerged. At first I thought it was human, tall, upright, 2 arms, 2 legs. But its proportions were wrong. Too long, too slender, as though someone had tried to sketch a man from memory and missed the details. Its skin was silver, reflective like liquid metal, and its eyes burned, not with fire, but with something colder, something ancient and merciless. The probe's audio spiked with static, and then, clear as if the being was standing right beside me, I heard its voice. Asterisk, you are late. Asterisk. I staggered back from the monitor, bow rising in my throat. Pierce gripped my shoulder hard enough to hurt, his face drained of color, but not surprise. "They've been waiting for us," he said. His voice trembled, but there was conviction behind it, as if this moment had haunted him for decades. I swallowed hard. Waiting for what? He met my eyes, and the weight in his answer nearly broke me. To finish what they started, before we were ever born. Pierce didn't let go of me. His grip was iron, his eyes full of something that wasn't fear so much as inevitability. "You still don't understand," he said. "This isn't new. This didn't begin tonight, or even with Apollo. Humanity's story, our evolution, our wars, our very existence, it's part of theirs. We were never outside this. We've always been inside their design." He led me to another monitor, this one locked behind layers of clearance I shouldn't have had. What I saw stripped away every shred of denial I'd been clinging to. Old documents, hidden mission reports, photographs that looked like history itself was holding its breath. Buried beneath the lunar crust weren't ruins. They weren't broken, abandoned remnants of some forgotten species. They were weapons. Massive constructs shaped like rings and towers, dormant but humming faintly, as though sleeping giants waited beneath the dust. Pierce's voice cracked as he explained. The moon isn't just a satellite. It's a fortress. It was put here, in orbit around Earth, for a reason. To watch. To wait. To contain. My mouth went dry. Contain what? He shook his head. Maybe not what. Maybe who. Maybe us. The voice in the comms grew louder that night. Not in the equipment, but in the open. Entire networks scrambled as transmissions burst across frequencies worldwide. It wasn't confined to Houston anymore. It was everywhere. Television feeds, military channels, civilian radio, all drowned out by a single word. Asterisk awaken. Asterisk. Another followed. Asterisk return. Asterisk. And then the one that chilled me to the marrow. Asterisk finish. Asterisk. Pierce turned to me, eyes burning with a grim certainty. Earth isn't being invaded, he said. We're being summoned. Called back to whatever we were made for. And for the first time, I wished the moon had stayed silent forever. The order came down before dawn. The world had shifted overnight, but most people didn't notice. Governments moved like shadows behind screens, mobilizing fleets and arsenals that had never been spoken of. Humanity had built them in secret, quietly, almost apologetically, and now they were being tested. The ships were not just vessels, they were weapons, alive in a way that mirrored the moon itself, crafted for a war we had only begun to understand. Pierce stood beside me, older than I'd ever realized, but fierce. This is it, he said. AHFY. Humanity, fuck yeah. They built us for this moment. Not as pawns, but as the answer. I stayed up at the moon. It hung in the sky, serene, silver, deceptively beautiful. But I knew better now. Its surface was a mask, a calm facade hiding something alive and ancient, something that had watched us from the moment we first looked up in wonder. Every ship, every soldier, every hidden station was now converging on the moon. Communications channels buzzed with coordinated movements, fleets synchronizing in ways that felt almost instinctive. For the first time, humanity wasn't scrambling, wasn't divided. We were unified, raw and ready, built for a fight that transcended politics, greed, or fear. Then the moon pulsed. Not a glow, not a signal, but a heartbeat that reverberated through every sensor, every vessel, every one of us listening. The voice came again, louder than ever, echoing in every mind simultaneously. Asterisk return. Finish. Awaken. Asterisk. Pierce put a hand on my shoulder. They wanted to test us, he said softly. To see if we were ready. They didn't know. We already were. And in that instant, as humanity's fleet surged toward the lunar surface, I understood the truth. The moon wasn't just a satellite. It was a challenge, a summons, a mirror. And for the first time, humanity had the answer. We weren't just reaching for the stars anymore. We were claiming our place among them. And nothing, no alien machine, no ancient force, was going to stop us.